Do I have
All
to do
right.
that? Do I have to do that?
You can do it too. Amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to be back here today with my friend Cheryl B. Engelhardt. She's been on the podcast before a couple of times now. If this is your first time connecting with her, then I'd like to introduce her quick. So she is a Grammy-nominated artist and composer. She's written for commercials, films, meditation programs, and social justice choirs. She's been featured in Forbes, Grammy.com, People Magazine. She's performed with Sting. She's secured dozens of TV placements for her songs, toured globally, has over 1 million streams for her music. So she's the real deal in terms of her own music career. And she's also leading a mastermind group for artists to be able to help musicians to get out of their own way in terms of achieving success. And so today, I'm really excited to connect with her and geek out a little bit about building systems and using tools to free up your energy and time as a musician. We were just talking a little bit backstage about writing code, and so I just got off of writing 2 or 3 hours worth of code. So it's a very analytical brain thing. So I'm probably gonna be like a robot here as we're having this conversation today.
Beep, beep, boop, bop. I was doing back end a little bit of coding, a little bit of branding stuff for her website, and so also in that same headspace. So
awesome. Well, we're all radioactive robots here in this community, so we'll make it rock. So Cheryl, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's so great to talk to everyone and dive into this stuff. I think it's really important to kind of be able to organize and figure out what systems are working, what aren't in your life, and optimize that. So I'm psyched to talk about this.
Awesome. So maybe to start with, if this is someone's first time connecting with you and you're kind of hearing about how you came up with these systems that you've built for musicians, could you briefly introduce yourself and maybe talk about the role of systems in your own life and career?
Yeah, systems is a word that was always in my life, but not until very recently I realized that was the thing. When there was a system in place, things worked. When I found there was a breakdown or something wasn't working or I was feeling really frustrated, usually there was a system either not in place or not optimized. And it was only until recently when I kind of put it together. It's funny because my dad was an engineer and had his company called Underground Systems Incorporated. So I grew up with USI system, the word systems was everywhere in my house and in my life. And it was only until very recently in my career, I was like, systems, email is a system, calendar is a system, how I communicate, how I organize, who I pitch to for licensing and venues, and an Excel sheet is a system. Everything that's working for my career and everything that I've seen get results has been due to having a really powerful system in place. So that's sort of the systems part of the answer. Backing up, I got started just knowing that I wanted to be in music. I was an intern at a hip hop recording studio for a while. I worked at a jingle house. I was a messenger in Manhattan for an advertising agency. Yeah. And I got to dip my toes in a lot of different areas of the music industry before landing a job as a assistant tech turned eventually composer for a jingle house in New York, writing not just jingles, but the music behind commercials, pharmaceutical ads and things like that. And it was in this beautiful studio. So during that time I was there, it was about 3.5 years. I was writing my own music and would rehearse there and sort of started prepping to tour with the band. And so then I started doing weekend tours, anywhere I could get to, from Portland to DC with the band, and then ended up leaving there to go do the whole release some, singer-songwriter pop records and tour all over the country and Europe, which led to some licenses and speaking at conferences and sort of getting some small successes and turning them into bigger successes and trying to use the opportunities that were coming my way to open up doors for bigger opportunities. That eventually led to, I was also a freelance composer, and sort of because of my commercial contacts was able to use that to get some more placements, also do some freelance composing on the side. I started to get into films and other kinds of media. And all the while I was working on my own personal development. I was dealing with my own anxiety, and that led me to trying to find music to help my meditations and that practice, which I didn't really love because I was sitting still wasn't working for me. So I started creating music that would sort of start like an anxiety attack, the tempo would be the heart rate of it, and it would slow down over time. And I started turning those into albums that were more in the new age category, and they were getting number one on iTunes and Amazon. And I was like, am I new age art? This feels good. I'm not even trying over here. I'm trying so hard with my pop stuff. And then, so one thing led to another, and I sort of really let myself become part of the new age genre. And my Grammy nomination is for my 7th album, which was in the new age ambient category. And that kind of opened up a whole world of other collaborations and choral. And so I'm very project based right now. And I've always really been interested in my own growth and what's stopping me, what's getting in my way, what are things that I need to unlearn in order to open up doors to new things and new results that I want. And so that had me go down my own personal development program. But then I just was doing so much of that work that I got certified as a trauma-informed coach so that I could bring the work that I was doing for myself officially and in a really responsible way to the musicians in my communities, and for some of the resources that I was creating for them around things I had learned about marketing. Email is like my big system that I can dork out forever. I have a program called Rock Your Email List that's really about growing and building and engaging with a fan base so that you can sell to them when it's time to sell to them. So that's sort of the nutshell of like my whole career. And if I did not have systems in place, like I would not be able to do as much as I'm doing and stay organized and not constantly be in a panic attack.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, a couple of things that come to mind as you're describing your story as it relates to like systems. And sometimes there's things that we might not necessarily think of like as systems, but like they are systems, like organic systems, biological systems.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that you introduce, trauma therapy and helping, to heal from within, as a part of what you're offering, because it seems like that's probably the thing that gets in the way more than anything else, right?
Yeah. And like you said, that's one of those unseen things where we think it's one thing, like, oh, I'm not getting seen by my audience the way I want to be. It must be because of the algorithm, or I need to do something better with my marketing. But really, there might have been something that happened, whether capital T trauma, meaning like an event, like an assault or like a divorce or something, or lowercase t, where there's like ongoing sort of dysfunction or training that ends up being sort of toxic for our nervous systems. So if something happened when we were younger, where we were seen and then something bad happened, right? When you're like, and then you're taught to like, it's not safe to be seen. We're going to have that in our bodies, even as musicians, when all we want is to be seen and heard, right? So we have this like battle of like, this is what I want for my career, is to be seen and heard. But then we have this like younger version of ourselves in our nervous systems that will somehow subconsciously, of course, sabotage any results that would have us being seen, because being seen is unsafe. So if you can go back and heal whatever that is, like boom, like the world of being seen opens up. And I've seen this countless times now with the people I'm working with. It's really, really beautiful to heal. Hello, fuzzy. So hello. It's really beautiful thing to just be able to heal that for yourself, but then also see what comes out of it for your career of like, oh, it wasn't that I like didn't know enough. And I'm not saying don't go out and get skilled in how to market and how to pitch and how to be really powerful and all of the tools that are out there at our disposal. But at some point when you feel like you have done all of the things, and if you're even like, I've done all the things and I don't see any results, there's probably something really personal that needs to get dug into and needs to get seen, ironically. Yeah.
Oh man, that's some really good stuff. Yeah, it definitely seems like there's that like core resistance, and I don't want to geek out too much here and go into like Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, kind of things.
It's one of the first books I read on this stuff like 20 years ago.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, that book has changed my life. And a lot of what he talks about, it seems like it kind of speaks to what you're describing now in terms of the relationship with, this moment and looking at the relationship. And is it like, I'm like resisting this, or it's not okay. It's not, it should be different. It should be different than the way that it is. And it seems like that trauma is sort of connected to that, from not being able to fully just be present. And the meditation as well, sitting with that and like looking at what's happening and being, okay with the stuff coming up when it's painful.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm gonna steer away back a little. Maybe we can come back here a little bit later, because I do think that this is like
I can always
really
come back here. So yeah, we can jump around anywhere you want to go.
Awesome. I mean, the big question that was coming up was just around systems in general, because I've had a similar experience in terms of systems. Like if I don't have a system, then generally things go wild and they go off track and stuff doesn't get done. But with a system, then you have very clear steps that you can take to optimize it, to improve it.
Yeah.
Could you define from your perspective, when we talk about systems, like what's the framework? Like what is a system, and how do you design a good system for success in your life?
Yeah, I think my definition of system is something that supports you, that has specific parameters inside of a particular topic. Like the few I've thrown out already are my calendar is a system for my time management, right? So it's like the structure for the what, right? Like my email list is a system for fan engagement. Like it is the system. And yes, I'm on social media but they feed into each other. And it's because of the system on email. And then system, I think, can also include an element of technology. What is the actual platform we're using, especially when so much of what we do is digital? I mean, you can have a system for your merch at live shows. Like we open the suitcase and the smalls are on the left and the large t-shirts on the right. Like that's a system, right? So there is a parameter for an area of your career. In this particular instance, it's like the live merch sale, and we can get down to microsystems and things like that. But I like to think of it as like packing a suitcase, and like the suitcase is the system, and there's certain things that go in it. And then there's certain things that might need to go in a different suitcase. So there's a little bit of compartmentalizing. And I think there's power and freedom inside of the parameters, inside of the compartmentalizing, so that you don't have system bleed. The thing that can get tricky is, where do you store all of your suitcases? And some people like to just go and create more systems, and like they don't actually know which one they need to be tapping into at any given point. So to me, that was like a really big, this breakthrough of like, oh, I need to have more of an overarching framework or a system for the systems. Hit me when I was on tour in Switzerland. We had just played for 4,000 people, like out on this amphitheater outside a lake. There's a mountain. It was like the best gig of my life. And I'm with my band, all of whom I loved. And we're on the rooftop of the hotel where we were getting put up. And we're like lying out there looking at the stars. It was like amazing. I was like, I need to write a song right now. Like this, like clearly this is like song environment here. I take out my pad and I'm like blank, like nothing's coming out. And my bass, and I was like, oh, well, it was like my second album. We were like touring to push the second album. And I was like, oh, 2-album run. That's not too bad. Never going to write another song again. I was just like, that's it, done. And my bass player was like, what is wrong with you? Like, of course you can't write a song right now. You're in like, where's our gear? What time do we need to be at sound check? You're in like tour mode. Like, why would you think you can like jump into creative mode and like go write a song? And I was like, and that gave me a lot of permission to kind of ride the ebbs and flows of the different energies of what we do as musicians. And so I put together, soon after that, I was like, all right, what are these like phases, so that I know what I'm in, and I give myself permission to be fully in this phase and not stress about doing things in the other phases, which requires energetic transition and like time and like juggling things, like all the stuff that like has us become overwhelmed, burned out, all those words, right? When we're jumping around trying to do too many things, trying to unpack all of the different suitcases, all the different systems. So I call this the musician success cycle, because there's 5 phases, but we're in this for the long haul. We're constantly going around them. We'll learn from the next one. We'll learn from the last one. We keep learning and building, but you create a goal for this particular cycle. And then you're either, phase 1 is like learning and determining, what do I want for this phase? You're sort of like meandering. Maybe you take a class, maybe you read a book, you kind of let the energy come in, like downloads, right? Phase 2 is like, this is what I want to do. Now I'm going to go create it. Maybe your goal this time is to really set up a powerful email list. And so the creation phase is tapping into the muse and writing beautiful email sequences to set up. Maybe it's writing the song and recording. Maybe you're releasing an album. So the very typical example is like the creation phase is creating an album. Then the third phase, a lot of musicians like to skip, which is like the admin, sort of the grunt work, where the energy is like, let's just do, this is the setting up the metadata. This is the doing the research for pitches later, depending on what your goal is that you determined in phase 1. This is where the systems for time management, for the planning, for branding systems happen here. Like, are my colors aligned on all my social media? Like all of this stuff, right? This happens in this, set yourself up really well so that you can go to phase 4, which is pitching and promotion, where it's like energy's out. Like, all right, now we made the thing. We have all the T's crossed and I's dotted. Let's go pitch to, depending on what the goal is. Do we want to go play tours? We're pitching venues, music supervisors, our fans we're promoting to, whatever the goal was. And then 5 is maintaining and monetizing. This is where, if you did a fan funding campaign, you're fulfilling on that stuff. You might be doing 1 or 2 tasks from other phases to sort of tie up the nice bows, but when you get that itch of like, cool, now what? You're probably transitioning back to phase one and like, all right, let's create a new goal. What do we want for this time? What do we want to pick up from last time? And this just has given me and so many musicians the freedom to do the tasks that are in that particular phase, to open the suitcase, the systems that are in that phase only, and not to ignore or put on the back burner, but just know we're going to get to it. But energetically, like if we allow ourselves to focus, like the overwhelm just goes right away. And we are so much more effective and more likely to get those goals quicker because of that permission.
So good. I mean, you just shared like the whole breakdown of the system, which is amazing.
Thank you. And the systems to run all systems.
The systems for the system, the metaverse.
Very
of
meta.
The systems.
We're so meta here.
So, for someone who might be listening to this right now, who is resonating with this idea of like, I need to have systems, and I know I need systems, but like my life, it's like I'm always doing something and I don't have enough time and X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
How would you recommend they get started and approach, building systems for themselves? Like, what are some low-hanging fruit for opportunities to start building those?
Yeah, the most successful people that I know wear multiple hats and have multiple passions, and they are masters at their schedules. They are the people that are never 5 minutes late for a coffee date. They are the ones that are be like, hey, I know we said we're going to talk in 5 minutes. Can we talk in 10? Like they're the people that have their schedules mastered. So I would start with time management. I would get really, really great with your calendar, because then you can build in times to build the systems. So if you have your calendar system set, all other systems can come from that because you say so. There are a couple of caveats around using your calendar as the starter system. And one is you have to have integrity, meaning you do what you say you're going to do. You have to have that relationship with yourself and use your calendar, not just for your dentist appointments and your coffee dates with friends, but also hold the events that you put in that are for you. Like I put in everything that I have to do in my calendar so that it exists in time. I do not have to-do lists. To-do lists are a huge source of overwhelm. They're never ending. They have the black cloud when we look at them. Sometimes it feels good to check things off. But if I think, oh, I need to send this email, I need to spend about an hour video editing, like that goes right into my calendar. And then I don't need to think about it until Friday at 2:00. And then Friday at 2:00 comes up. I look at my calendar. Oh, it's time to edit that video. Cool. And it is a skill that takes time to develop, to know how long things take so that you can put in the right amount of time. So in the beginning, I always tell people to overestimate how long you think something will take. And then if you have extra time at the end, like, cool, go walk your dog or, like take a nap. But if you get that calendar system going, and it doesn't matter what system you use, if you use like in terms of the technology, I use iCal, if you use Google Calendar, even if you use a paper calendar, as long as you have a way to put things in, move them. I allow myself to move an event I put in 3 times. It either is not important or I need to break it down. That's usually why I end up moving something more than once. iCal allows me to do that without having to erase all the time. But whatever system you use is the system that's going to work best. So I would start with time management and then say, okay, let's take 2 hours to build my email system. Or I would first look at, what do you want right now? Like what's most important to you? Because there's dozens of different systems you can build for a music career that would benefit you, but it all is going to depend on what are you going after right now? And can you narrow that down? And then look at, okay, what research do I need to do? And I would go through the phases. What system do I need in phase 1 for this particular goal? What creation system do I need? Do I need contracts for co-writers? Like you sort of can create based on what it is you want. So I'd start with the time and then I'd start with the goal.
Awesome. So good. Yeah. So starting with the calendar as a source of truth, blocking off time, overestimating a little bit what you think it might take, and figuring out like what should you actually fill the calendar with in the first place. In terms of setting aside time to plan, kind of like what we're talking about, the meta of like systems of the systems. I mean, I've had the exact same experience in terms of using a calendar as a source of truth to like create focus blocks and setting aside time to do planning on like a weekly, quarterly,
I calendar
yearly
my
basis.
Calendar time for sure. Yeah. You can
Right.
calendar your calendar time. It's okay.
Awesome. And so I'm curious for that specific work of doing the planning, because was that quote, planning is invaluable, but plans themselves are useless. But like the actual process of planning is just so valuable. So I'm curious to hear, as it relates to what we're talking about right now with like, blocking off your time, creating projects, creating goals, what type of system have you found that works best for you for actually setting those goals and for checking in on and doing your calendar management?
Yeah, I love that. I literally, like, I was it last week on my TikTok is music career coach. I was walking down the street in New York City and I saw this bank's like huge slogan and it said the power of the plan. And I got on TikTok and I was like, yes, there's definitely power in a plan, but the power actually lives in your integrity around the plan. Like, you can say, I'm going to, like, the plan to me is the actions you're going to take to achieve a goal. That's what a plan is. And the plan also validates the goal. And without the plan, the goal is really just a dream. And I'm here. I love dreams. I love me some good dreams. But when you put a plan in place, like, these are the actions I'm going to take so that this dream becomes a reality, then we're talking about goals. But there's one level deeper. Like, yes, that's powerful to have these actions you're going to take. Unless you take the actions, there's no power in the plan. So it comes down to your integrity and your willingness to, and when I say integrity, I mean you doing what you said you were going to do by the time you said you were going to do it. That's my definition of integrity. And it's not morality. It's not like, oh, right or wrong. It's just like workability. Like, it doesn't work for you to create a plan and then not take the actions, right? And not do what you said you're going to do. I mean, it doesn't work in the sense that goal is just not going to get achieved, right? So I love that you were like, you're sort of, that quote that you had said was sort of connected to that. And maybe that's where that bank got their slogan from. They sort of twisted it around a little, the power of a plan. But it really comes down to like, okay, what am I committed to and what lights me up? So this gets into the, like, how do you actually like pick a goal when there's so many, like, if you're releasing a single, you could have any number of goals for it. Like, hey, I want to have 10,000 streams, or I want, 100 people to buy it, or I want it to be placed on a TV show, or I want it to be showcased at this like showcase where a song circle or something that is pretty famous. And like, there's a lot of different things that you could want for this particular song. And or record or whatever it is that you've got that you're ready to like give to the world. So if you can get clear on what lights you up, and a good way to do this is like write down all the things that are possible, all the different ways that you could go, right? And there's any number of ways. And it's not to say you can only do one way. Like, when we release an album, like, yeah, we want to get on radio if we're touring. Radio promotions are completely useless if you're not touring. But, or maybe you want to go after sales charts, but maybe it's like, oh, it'd be really cool to be number one on iTunes in my genre. If you're in a smaller genre, it's actually very possible to do. So then you're in a sales game. So then you're like, cool. All right. So then it's about fan engagement and getting the sales and maybe some press with a direct link to the sales. So then how you're going to talk about it changes. So everything sort of comes back from the goal. But if the goal doesn't light you up, it doesn't get you excited, then that's going to translate to all the copy that you create, everything that you say. So no one else is going to get excited. So make a list and just sort of feel, and this is so like woo-woo, you guys, I'm sorry, but like feel into it, and maybe even write them on like index cards and like have someone be like, all right, 1,000 streams on Spotify. And you're like, meh, like play at this festival that I always want to play. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's the one. Like, cool. Put that in the like go pile, right? So you can like literally see what happens in your body. And this is where some of that somatic training comes in. And the more we listen to our body, it's telling us the things that are exciting for us. Sometimes maybe like the show is scary and you're like, oh, I don't want to do the live show because we've got something to heal around being seen, but there's like a spark, right? And there's something to look at and something to dig into. So just get curious about yourself and why does that light you up, or why are you like a no to that? Are you no to that because it's just like not interesting, or because it is interesting but it's scary, or there's a fear, what if it goes really well, or like the fear of success equally as big as a fear of failure. You're like all that stuff, right? So when you get curious about what's going on in your body, you're going to be able to make really powerful decisions, and that's going to translate to how you talk to your fans, how you pitch. That energy is just going to be felt, and the results are going to be bigger because of it.
Wow. Yeah, that's so good. So I mean, that last part that you just brought up around being able to sit with how you're feeling and to be able to determine the difference between something that's like fear, that's a compass moving in the right direction, versus something that is you should not do.
Right.
I'm curious if we could go a little bit deeper into that. Like, how do you distinguish between that type of fear, like when you have a goal or you have something like that, and you're trying to figure out, like, is this something I actually want to do? Is it actually worth it? And how does someone navigate around that internal fear and use it as a compass when it is the right thing to do?
Yeah. Well, if you're feeling a feeling of fear around an idea, let's just use the live show. Like, you want to play the live show, but then you have this, like, you feel like, oh, that's a little scary. Let's put that in the no pile. We'll use live show as an example. You can look at, I like to apply the same sort of concept to other areas of your life. And if it has the same feeling, then there's something there for you to heal. If it's just inside of your music career, it might just be not interesting to you. Or it's like, this doesn't feel aligned. Like, it might not just be disinterested, it might actually feel like sort of like an icky thing. So for example, with the live show, think about, like, what if you went to your, like, local town meeting and, like, stood up to talk? Does the same feeling, like, is it a public speaking thing, right? Or is it like being seen in a crowd thing? If it comes up there, think about, like, what if you got on stage in your local theater? Like, what are other ways that you could have the same thing happen? What are the common denominators? And put yourself in a couple different scenarios and feel into those and be like, oh, this might be something for me to work on. Cool. And then maybe eventually that will be a goal that I can work towards, because there is something that's, like, sparking a light there, right? Sparks can burn you, but they can also ignite big fires in a good way and bad way, right? So we want to look at, is this spark one that I want to put out, or one that I want to have it turn into the bonfire that will be my career? So that's sort of one thing, is, like, superimpose the idea of the thing that you may be afraid of into other areas completely unrelated to your music career, and see if it feels the same. If it doesn't, then it's like, oh yeah, I could talk there. All right, maybe I just don't want to play. Or maybe there's something else there around, like, the song's not being good enough. Is there another narrative that it's worth looking at that's just sort of self-sabotaging having a goal that you could do? You asked me, you actually, I think the other thing, like, how do you prioritize when you have a lot of options for goals? I actually do this with clients. Like, you can, and this is the dorky, like, coding dorky side, like, quantify different goals. Like, I'll have it, like, narrow it down to, like, 3 to 5 that feel good, feel aligned, feel like light you up. And you're like, okay, I can't do all of these at once. Like, that would not serve any one of these goals. And maybe it's like, I want to hit, 10,000 streams on Spotify. I want to get a licensing deal, and I want to go tour festivals. Like, yes, you can do all of those. And right now there might be a better one to work at. So the first thing I do is play out, if each one of those, start with one of them, succeeded exactly, like, best case scenario, how would it leverage the other two? So you don't have to start at 0 with the other 2 goals that you have. So, if you got 10,000 streams on Spotify, is that going to leverage what were the other 2 goals? Playing festivals or getting licensed? Like, maybe, but, like, maybe not. Okay, cool. Let's just put that to the side. So let's play it out with the second one. What if the second one, you started with that one first, and best case scenario, you got placed on Grey's Anatomy? Would that help your Spotify plays? Yes. Would that help you get booked? Possibly, like, talking point, right? So sure. And then play out the third one. All right, what if this one did we got into, like, Lollapalooza or Coachella or some, like, really great, awesome, like, we were an opening act for something. Would that increase our Spotify's? Probably a little bit. Like, it's a live show, so it's a little bit more of a container. Would it help with our getting placed? Like, maybe it might help. But so to me, it's like, oh, maybe licensing is the thing if it lights you up, So you can kind of do this, like, future playing thing. The other thing that I like to look at is how much money, how much time, how much effort. And I rank them between 1 and 10. And I have such a dorky Excel sheet. So if money is more important to you right now than time, you have a ton of time, or maybe you just had a kid and, like, time is crunched. So, like, time is more important if it takes less time. So you can weight them by multiplying them by 2 or 3. But basically you rank each of these 3 goals, how easy it will be, like 1 to 10, 10 being it would be really hard, 1 will be really easy. How much money could it potentially make you? 1, not a lot, but 10 potentially a lot. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you, like, love doing the work, like passion? 1, to stick with the scale, because you want the lowest score. 1 would be you love it a lot. 10 not. You can switch the scale, but either way, so the lowest number is the thing that you start with, or you can, maybe it's the highest number. You get what I'm saying? So you can literally quantify your goals and compare them and be like, oh, the obvious one is I need to be going after live shows right now. Like, that's going to do all of these things for me. So yeah, I get really nitty gritty with when it comes down to picking goals. As someone who is multi-passionate, it's always been a I'm always like, I can do all of it at once. And anytime I let myself actually focus is when the banana big results come in.
Awesome. I love that, the calculator that lets you score the goals and come up with a value for it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been like a reoccurring theme over the past month, and really over the past like 6 years. The Wanna Musician is just like the focus on value and the focus on scoring. We recently started to score our conversion events that we were sending from our Facebook ads for the Pixel. And
Cool.
in doing so, we went from just over breaking even with our ads to being over 10x for the past month. And the biggest thing we did was switch the scoring. Cool. And so that's super interesting that you've actually created a model where you can look at your goals, you can score them and look and see on a number basis what are the most valuable goals that light you up based on your criteria that you find valuable. Yeah. Awesome. So one thing I'd love to hear your perspective on, because you touched on this earlier, and I think this is extremely important, is the follow through and discipline and like showing up and like doing the work, doing the stuff. And it seems like there's a lot of systems that they can use to help you as it relates to being motivated and to do this stuff and to follow through. So I'm curious what you'd recommend for artists. Let's imagine that they did this work where they carved out a few hours to do some deep planning and figure out their calendar for the next week or the next month. And they figured out the things that they're most excited to do, but it's also kind of scary. Like it is kind of like, there's some resistance there. And and then they're starting to go through their day, and then something comes up, and there's also kind of scary to lean into the thing. So how would you recommend that they develop that muscle, like the follow through, the discipline, the integrity?
Yeah, it's such a good question, because it is a skill. It really is a skill, especially if we were growing up taught, and this is more for women, but everyone has it, like the people pleasing, like other people come first. It's why a lot of people use their calendars for other people. They don't use it for themselves. It's like the coffee dates, the dentist appointments, right? Like so I always ask people, I'm like, is your calendar or everyone else's calendar? And just having the context that this is a tool to support me and to support my business. And like, it's where I get to see everything happen in one place. That context really helped me, like that it's my calendar, not just other people's. So really like giving yourself permission to like have it be you centric and your business centric is really important. There are two things. There's one context, kind of just like a shift in how you think about the I don't wanna feelings. Two things about that. And when I say I don't want it, to me, it's like one word. I don't wanna, like it's all one word, all lowercase. And it's when you say I'm going to schedule something. So that Friday, 2:00, when I said I was going to edit the video and Friday 2:00 comes on, I'm like, it's happy hour somewhere. Like, I'll just move this to like, that's a feeling. That's not like a rational business decision that I'm making. Right. It's like when I don't want to comes in, it's for a variety of reasons. And it could be your, past stuff that you want to heal eventually. But like, for whatever reason, you're having some feelings about this thing. And it might be the fear of what if it gets done? And then there's a bigger thing that's even scarier beyond, like, who knows? But right now you're having the I don't want to feelings. So the first thing I do is I have a running list, literally next to my computer called my I don't want to list. And anytime I come across something that I don't want to do, like video editing, I write it down. And pretty soon your I don't want to list is going to look like your next hire, like a job description. And I learned very quickly that it's content creation, like video editing and creating graphics, blah, blah, blah. Like those went on my I don't want to list, because your I don't want to list is someone else's I wish I could list. So that's the first thing, is like, keep track of it. Just like notice I have strong feelings that I don't want to do this thing. I'm going to put it on my I don't want to list. And just acknowledging that in the first place actually mitigates the feelings a little bit. So you might right there just be like, I'm just going to do it. The second part of that is this statement, and maybe write this on the top of your I don't want to list. My feelings do not run my business. Because it's just a feeling, right? So if you keep letting that I don't want to win and run the show, like you're being run by, and usually those feelings are caused by some younger version of ourselves. So like, it's not even you making the choice. And so I am always interested in the musicians in my world to be really empowered who they are today. and to acknowledge the past little voices and the unhealed things and blah, 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 but you're the one that's driving. So note the I don't want to feelings, and then remember that you're the one that's going to say how this is going to go. And if the I don't want to gets to say how it's going to go, it's actually not going to go. Like, there you go.
I love it. Yeah, I don't want a list. So you can write it down. You can get it down in written form. There was a mastermind group that I was at probably about 6 months ago, and there was a speaker there that I think you would really enjoy connecting with her. But she described this mantra that she would say to herself as it relates to what you described around like your feelings. They can be there and you can acknowledge them, and it's okay that they're there, but they don't necessarily need to run your life, and they don't necessarily like, they're not as solid as they, like that. You can take ownership of what you actually do with them. But her phrase was, when she had fear or resistance or doubt to come up, she would say, thanks mind for trying to keep me safe, but I've got it from here.
Yeah, it's a good one. Like, thank you for sharing. I got it.
Yeah.
You can go on vacation. I got it. Yeah. Thanks, mind, for keeping me. And that's usually what those parts are doing. And this gets into IFS, internal family systems, which is like parts work. It's acknowledging that we are made up of a bunch of different voices and parts and things. Like when you say part of me wants vanilla and part of me wants chocolate, like they're both valid. Right. And to acknowledge all those parts, they're all there to make us safe, either protect us or guide us in some way. So we have these protector parts, we have these guide parts, and their intentions are all good. Even if the behaviors that we do, like go and watch Netflix for 4 hours instead of sending the 3 emails that we had to do, the behavior doesn't seem good. It's a protector part, because if you send those emails and you get a yes, it might be, maybe you will be putting yourself out there and it might be embarrassing. It's protecting you, right? But it's not moving your business forward. Yeah, I love that mantra. It's definitely a good one to have on a sticky note somewhere.
Yeah. Thanks for keeping me safe, but I've got it from here.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something about that phrase that's just stuck with me. And it's come up a few times. Like, yeah, like that's really good. Because you acknowledge it. Yeah. I think part of the power of what you just described was the fact that like, you're not trying to pretend that the feelings aren't there, but you're acknowledging them, and then, reclaiming your ownership of what you actually do with it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we do have live audiences here right now, and I would love to open up the floor to anyone that's here right now that has a question for Cheryl. So if you'd like to raise your hand, you can right-click on your icon and come up on stage. Otherwise, if you'd like to put a question in the chat, then you can put something in the chat and we can answer it that way as well. All right, so I'm looking through the chat. There's lots of people sharing love for Cheryl.
Oh, thanks.
Rakuda, being open and honest with oneself equates to being vulnerable within oneself.
Yeah, totally.
People enjoying the Eckhart Tolle talk. Awesome.
It's also Brene Brown is the brave. Vulnerables is actually where braveness comes in. It's not a weakness. And so a lot of her books are really about flipping that context too, which I love. So yeah, vulnerable is a great word.
Awesome. So I see David Patrick Wilson raise his hand. So let's bring on David.
Ed.
Hey, David, how are you doing today? I think we don't have you on here yet, David. I'm not sure if
am I supposed to see this person? Because I don't see any.
If he comes up on stage, you should be able to hear him, but you won't be able to see him.
Okay, cool.
But
here we go.
There he is.
There he is. Hey, David.
Hey there. How are you? Thank you so much. You can hear me now?
Yes.
We got you now. Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, that's really some great stuff. And I've worked with a lot of, different ontologists, not oncologists, ontologists. It's actually the study of beingness that I worked with a man named Werner Erhard. He had a thing about the moment of failing to be. It's one moment that everybody has that they share that usually happens, before you're like 4 or 5 years old. And from that point, you can actually track through your life where it affects every other decision that you make, where, it's really reporting what your decisions are going to be until have you ever discovered that moment for yourself?
Oh yeah. And there's a bunch, and I've done a lot of Warner's work as well. You have moments usually between age 0 and 4 or 5, and then between 5 and 12 to 13 and then 13 to 18, there's usually about 3 moments where something happened, and it can be as simple as like you couldn't find your mom in the store and you had this panic, and then you made a decision then like, I'll never be lost again. And then you're taking actions based on that decision that little kid made. And we all have that defining moment. And yes, I do have one. My very specific one for the second sort of age group was, I was told when I was 8 years old that my music teacher was like, you're probably going to be Cinderella in the school play. And I was like, woo, of course I am. I was a little piano prodigy. I played the piano since I was like 2. And then Not only did I not get Cinderella, I did not even get a stepsister. I did not get the pumpkin. I did not get the fairy godmother. I was like in the chorus. And so I was so sad about this and so like distraught. And a couple things happened. And this is like the gift that keeps on giving. Like every year in like some therapy session, like my Cinderella story comes up again. And I'm like, my mom was like trying to take care of me. I was like, oh, like sadness is not welcome here. Like I constantly learn different lessons that I chose then. But back then it was like, what ended up happening was they invited me to play the piano for this big ball scene that I was supposed to be in as the chorus. And I was the one at the end of the show that got the standing ovation, not the Cinderella. So what I took away was, I'll do it my way. And I'll go outside the box. And later on, I discovered I also have I can't trust authority. So, that was one of those moments, right? So I think that's what you're talking to. And when you can be guided
exactly.
through to find that, you can heal that and learn from it. And then you get to choose. Then you get to power back. And I can choose, do I want to trust authority here? Or is this my 8-year-old self being mad at my music teacher, right? Like that's how you bring it into your adult life, is you get the power of choice back once you distinguish it.
That's right. Not only that, you have the opportunity to actually use it to some positive application rather than allowing it to live you. You get to live your own life at that moment,
Yeah, beautiful.
Awesome.
I mean, it's beautiful, brilliant stuff.
Thanks. Didn't think I'd be telling a Cinderella story here, but thanks for that, David. Really appreciate it. Yep. Okay.
That was great. Cinderella story. Awesome. Yeah. Well, Cheryl, it's been great connecting again, having you on the podcast, and we got to go down some uncharted territory that we haven't had these discussions before. But I think that the cross section of this work that you're describing right now, with healing from trauma and some of these inner wounds, mixed with, for musicians, being able to share who they are and express themselves, is a super, super valuable thing. So I appreciate the work that you're doing. And for anyone that's here right now who's resonating with this conversation, is interested in learning more about the resources that you offer, could you share a little bit more details about where they can go to dive deeper?
Yeah, I'm music career coach on TikTok and Instagram, so you can follow me there. I'd love all of you, since we talked about it, and I didn't know we were going to dive into get the full framework, the musician success cycle. And that's a free like little mini course where I go deeper into each of those 5 phases, and you actually figure out which one you're in right now. And then you can figure out what actions to take next, and you can kind of put some other things on the backside. So you can go to www.inthekey.co/cycle. So inthekey.co/cycle, and you need the www, and you can get in there for free, and it sort of brings you to a portal, and you can see all the other stuff that I offer too. But that's I think would be the most important thing to take away from this, because it's the system that all the other stuff we've been talking about kind of fits into, and will eliminate some of that overwhelm and like, which thing do I do next? So I just want that for everybody, because that was such a big distinction for me. And I think it opened up a lot of time and energy and space in my career when I kind of was like, oh, this is the thing. Okay, cool.
Awesome. The system for the systems. And then another system for that system for the systems. Just systems all the way up.
All the way up. Yeah.
The metaverse.
I don't know when they stop. Yeah.
It does. I mean, okay. I really need to be careful here, because we could go into to black hole territory. But some of the simulation theory type of stuff, and like the way that our universe is set up, it does seem like it's all systems. It is all systems, and there's like a meta system for all the meta systems. We're all part of the systems. We're in a system right now with the podcast. The conversation that we're having is a system. So it's interesting. The world is systems.
It is called the solar system for a reason.
The solar system. Yeah. Boom. There we go. Well, hey, let's do a virtual round of applause for Cheryl for coming on here live. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Thank you.